Welcome back to Radio Nerd America. This is part 2 of our Building Universes franchises. Who's doing it right? Who's doing it wrong? When we first did this, we were going to do just one episode, but we got a little long-winded.
Yeah, the discussion got a little long for sure, so we have to split it in 2 episodes.
Yep, so if you're just joining us now, part 1 we covered Star Trek, Harry Potter, Twilight, X-Men, DC, a couple other properties. This episode we're going to be covering Star Wars, Alien, Predator, Game of Thrones, Terminator, amongst others. But it's been a little bit of a long break, longer than we had anticipated. We were going to get the second episode out just a couple weeks after the last one, but obviously there was some delay. So we also want to touch base on some things that have happened in the interim. So one of those things, I believe, Alan, we have both seen Logan, correct?
Yeah, so Logan was a movie that I didn't see when it first came out, and we wanted to just talk about it briefly because it relates to the franchise's discussion we had. So were you 2 thumbs up on Logan?
2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm there with you.
Best Wolverine movie yet. Finally, after 12 years.
Well, I mean, dare we say the best X-Men movie in general, right?
You know, I initially wanted to argue that, but I can't.
No, yeah, I don't, because there hasn't been any real great. There's been good ones, but not really, really good ones, I don't think.
Yes, this one was poignant. I mean, it was violent, of course, it's Wolverine, but it was interesting to see him downtrodden and not at his peak, but still trying to be the good guy ultimately.
I liked when I first saw the previews and stuff, it kind of made it feel, I was worried it was going to be kind of boring, like there wasn't people in suits and there wasn't laser beams and all this kind of stuff. But when I finally did go and see it, I was really pleasantly surprised. I really liked the feeling it had. And I kind of liked how they went into the future, right? So, okay, the movie ended how it ended, but then there's all this time in between, right? The movie was in the future, so there's a lot of gaps for them to fill up until that point in time, right? So yep. I think it didn't put themselves into a corner with how the movie ended. I think it leaves them some open space to play with between now and that time period.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't really have a lot to add to that other than it was just perfect. It was the perfect Wolverine movie. It bums me out because this apparently is going to be the last one. No spoilers in case you haven't seen it, but...
Well, I mean, it's kind of... And it was the last one in like Hugh Jackman's contract, right? So if they do anything more, it's probably going to end up being somebody else. Or...
He's made hints that he would come back if he could be in an Avengers movie, but Fox and...
Yeah,
Marvel
who knows if that's going to work itself out.
I
did like, though, we talked in our franchise discussion about Marvel, that I felt like for the X-Men franchise, this movie took it sort of in a new genre, right? It wasn't just a big superhero, smashing buildings, aircraft movie. It really took it in a new way, in the way that sort of we talked about Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy, right?
Well, I agree, and I think what's happening here is Fox has taken a page out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's playbook. Let's face it, they started out as just superhero movies, but now each Marvel movie is something else that has superheroes in it. I mean, look at Captain America: The Winter Soldier. It's a political suspense film that has superheroes. So I'm glad they took... I mean, really, if you want to look at it, Logan is a Western.
Yeah, no,
it's a modern Western.
Yeah, they talk about a Western, it's a road movie, all that kind of stuff. So, okay, the other one we were going to talk about that we watched in the interim here that we already discussed in episode 1, I believe, was Kong Skull Island.
I have not seen it.
Okay, so I won't do... It's still kind of early, so I won't do any spoilers, but to me, it was 2 thumbs up.
Really?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. There's a post-credit scene, right, that moves the storyline along that was, great. I was excited to see that.
Well, this is another shared universe. This is same cinematic universe as the Gareth Edwards Godzilla movie.
Yep.
So, but this is not necessarily a prequel, but this happens before. Yes? Because this takes place in the 70s, where I thought Godzilla was now.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, this one did take place... It's actually funny, yeah, it takes place, yeah, like post-Vietnam era. And so, yeah, so it's in the same universe, but, right, exactly. So I thought the movie was great. I loved the performances, the special effects. I love how they handled King Kong. There's other creatures in the movie. I just really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Awesome. That's one of those I wanted to check out, but it's lower on my list of things I had to see.
Yeah.
I had to see Logan. Kong, I was like, I'll probably wait till video on that.
Yeah, I was the reverse with those two. I was really excited for Kong, and I think I saw Logan at the cheap theater.
Really?
So I really got my money's worth out of that one. So, okay, so as mentioned, we're going to jump into the next episode. Like we said, we just had to split the episode in half. So after the music bumper here, you're going to kind of just get us running right into the discussion again. We start off with the doozy, which is Star Wars.
Yep, we're jumping right in head first, and here we go.
What makes you think you can bullshit your way into my head? Like every other pencil-neck piece of shit!
Which, interesting enough segue, that's the next one on the list here. Again, some of these things are hard to put numbers on, but little basic internet research I found that they say that it was a $41 billion estimate of value of the franchise. That was before Rogue One. The article I read was before Rogue One. It's the king of toys and merchandising. It pretty much set the standard for that. But here's the thing I want to talk about that I've alluded to a little bit already. Aside from some of those side books in the years past, but now it's all in one timeline. So you have this little thing called equity. And to me, that's what the gold standard is right now, is that I watch the movies. If I choose to watch the animated series, if I choose to invest in time to reading the new canon books, the new comics, it's all equity. I'm putting all of my money into one account, right? Whereas that's the thing that I don't have a problem with it, but I think it's what's going to make Star Wars very successful for a long time, where we talked about these issues that Marvel and DC are having. Well, your video games, your movies, and your comic books, they just don't exist, and they can't. And it's not their fault, but they just sort of can't because of all the different things going on. I think they just announced the newest Marvel video games. They're not going to be tied to the movies at all because they sort of know, it's too limiting.
Right. But yet Star Wars, all their books and all their comics and all the movies and TV shows are now all canon.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why it's the number one model, because there's nothing you invest your time into that doesn't then pay off for you to go see their next movie and their next series. Everything is part of a big payoff now.
Exactly. And you can stick with just the movies if you want.
Yep.
But if you do, partake of some of those ancillary products like Rebels, there are Easter eggs like crazy now within the main films to reward those people that are into the other stuff. Now, I know you've read the books and I haven't, so I don't know if there have been any book Easter eggs in the movies we've seen yet, and maybe those are coming yet. But already we've seen Rebels, things that have shown up in Rebels or shown up in Clone Wars, have now shown up in Rogue One and in Force Awakens. Maybe not so much Force Awakens, but definitely Rogue One.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much of the tie-in together, and to me, that's sort of what makes it a strong franchise. I mean, we talk about the toys, the merch. Disney is going to be opening whole sections of Disney World and Disneyland, I think, in a couple years of Star Wars, so they have that backing. But yeah, the book. So, for instance, the Rebels cartoon series, I knew it was canon, and I started sort of watching it. But then the last book that I just finished reading was A New Dawn, which is basically the Kanan and Hera story before Rebels. And I didn't have that much interest in the book. I'm like, well, I'll read it because it was the next one in the timeline that I was reading. But as I got into it, I really started enjoying it because I sort of knew a little bit about the characters from Rebels. I wasn't really bought into them. But the two things now have reinforced each other in my creative mind of Star Wars universe.
It's synergistic.
Yes. Gotcha. So now I care about Rebels more, and had there not been Rebels, I wouldn't have cared about this book. And they all both also have little tiny, I don't even almost want to call them Easter eggs, but you can just tell that they're alluding to things that happen later on. So again, it's all, like I said, it's all sort of investment into the same bank account.
They're doing a very, very, very good job of tying everything together.
And I would like to see, and maybe it's not too late for some of them. I think that Marvel, the DC, the ones that have existed in a long time in lots of multimedia for many years, it's almost impossible for them to do it. But some of the newer things that we might talk about, or some of the, Cloverfield or things like that are newer, Harry Potter, if they can follow that's the way to go. Have everything being all going into the same universe. Nothing that diverges from the original storyline.
I agree.
After that, another one that's near and dear to you, Alien.
And once again, rest in peace, Bill Paxton. You will always be Private Hudson in my mind. But yeah, Alien, one of my favorite franchises. And I'm going to kind of tie it in with Predator 2, which is also up there with me of mine as a favorite franchise. God, it began so strong. I mean, here you have a horror movie in space, and then a sequel is an action movie in space, and then the wheels kind of fall.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I wrote about it was began strong, faded, and is now making a comeback. Because, yeah, I agree. I mean, the original Alien movies were before my time, so I watch them now, but I get kind of caught in sort of... I do really like them. I don't think it's possible for me to like them as much as you like them, just because of our age and when they came out and stuff. But also, some sort of a baggage thing I could say here is the Alien is not, and other things we're talking about, is not necessarily kid friendly, and I think that makes a huge difference to the success and franchising. But yeah, like you said, Alien 3 was one that came along when I was beginning to be interested in, well, what is this alien thing? So I saw it as a kid. And I thought it was interesting just because of some of the concepts. Oh, well, we live on this planet infested by lice, so we have to shave our heads. That was really cool to me. That was sort of a sci-fi concept that my brain at that point in time was just starting to fathom what life could be like somewhere else. So I had fond memories of Alien 3, but then Resurrection was definitely kind of a mess. Again, the themes of Prometheus I really loved. Now, they really laid a few eggs on the storyline and stuff like that.
Yes.
But some of the themes I really, really loved. I've been waiting for those themes to be told in movies, so I was willing to look the other way on the crappy storyline things they wrote in there. But the next one I'm interested in, they tied in with Dark Horse Comics, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're even though they weren't kid-friendly, the movies, they made for pretty good toys, Halloween costumes, things like that.
Oh, yeah. I have a bunch of the toys. They're still making toys. Well, maybe not currently at the moment, but it's more high-end collectors type toys are still coming out.
Yeah.
Sorry, collectibles. Maybe they're not toys.
Yeah. I mean, in H.R. Geiger.
Oh.
So, I mean, how did I even get this far without mentioning his name? Again, just pushing the aesthetic of science fiction, aliens, creatures, pushing it to some place that we would never have gotten there had he not done what he was doing.
Oh, it's fantastic. He was the perfect artist to come up with this creature. And I'm going to go back a little bit and agree with you. I know you have fond memories of Alien 3. I will still argue, and I have argued for years now, by itself, Alien 3 is a fantastic movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's suspenseful. It's violent at times when it needs to be, but you never know exactly what's going on and who's going to take it next. Maybe sometimes, but it's a scary movie, and I like it. It just doesn't fit well in the series because the first Alien, I still watch it every now and then.
Yeah.
And it still makes me jump at the right points. I think it's a very well done movie. Aliens is more action. I enjoy it. I mean, it's over an hour into the film before you first see an alien or a xenomorph.
Yeah.
So the first three are strong. Like I said, I can argue whether or not Alien 3 should come after Aliens. But you're right. Alien Resurrection, it was a huge misstep. I have a friend of mine, Mike Ring, who runs and owns Bridge City Comics in Portland. He's a fan of it, and good for him.
Yeah. And you know what? It's one of those things that Winona Ryder. Like, I don't know if it's her or that movie, but just I forever have a bad taste in my mouth with Winona Ryder, and I think it's tied to me not liking that movie.
I don't know. There's so much bad in it. I don't know.
Yeah. And Alien in general, we can't wrap up the discussion on the Alien franchise without talking about Sigourney Weaver and her Ripley.
Oh,
right?
She's fantastic.
Ripley's place in heroines and female power characters, right? You know what I mean? Like
taking this this traditional stereotypical male action role and kind of turning it on its head and running with it, and she's fantastic. If we didn't have her, we wouldn't have had Linda Hamilton in the Terminator series.
Yeah,
you wouldn't see. I mean, I can name others, but the one that keeps coming to mind most recently is Emily Blunt.
Yeah, she's been in a lot of movies.
What is it? Edge of No Tomorrow.
Yeah, Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Die Another Day or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Live, Die, Repeat. Whatever they renamed it. So there are haters too. I'm gonna touch base real quick on Alien versus Predator.
Yeah, well, the next one we have on the list is Predator, so let's just kind of bring them together.
I actually enjoyed Alien vs. Predator, even though it's PG-13. And I know it's not a good movie in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no, it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable if you like Alien, if you like Predator, it's enjoyable. It's not maybe what we had wanted in a perfect world, but
no,
it was fun.
It was fun, but a sequel, Alien
Yeah, Requiem,
Oh,
yeah.
don't even bother.
But again, that's one too where from the very beginning, had they known enough to play it out, to let these things have 6 movies on their own before they come together and they build up to them coming, you know what I mean? Like, then it would have been great. But they kind of just threw it together at the end, right?
And that's where I'm going to go back and kind of pay homage again to Marvel. They had a plan, not maybe from day one, but once they saw they were having success, they mapped out where they wanted to go next. Whereas the Alien and Predator franchise is just like, okay, the first one this one was successful, let's try another one. And then, okay, this one wasn't quite as successful, we'll wait for a few years, and then we'll try and bring it back.
Yeah, and we talked about in a future episode, we're probably going to come in and get more in-depth, specifically on the Alien and Predator movies, but yeah, I mean, if I segue a little bit now to Predator, the Predator Alien character was great. I mean, I wrote there, in a sense, it's similar to the Alien franchise. They had the crossover with Dark Horse Comics, but they had the crossover with DC as well. Predator versus Batman was a great comic book series that I put some equity into back in my day in comic books. But also with Predator, how much of the success of it was also Arnold? I think that's hard to put a number on looking back. It was almost like Arnold was a superhero back then. So it was Predator, Outer Space Alien versus superhero, basically, is what that was.
Right, and I'll give it. This was the first one was an Arnold movie, and it did very well. And I think his name really brought a lot to it because even though I really, really enjoy Predator 2, Danny Glover is not the draw.
Right.
That Arnold Schwarzenegger is.
No, and I loved the sort of story of Arnold in the jungle. His military team was like almost a comic book team of people. You had Jesse the Body. I mean, I forget everybody's actual name, but all the people in that movie, they were all interesting individual characters that they all had sort of strengths and weaknesses. I mean, there was a Native American guy who had the spiritual connection, and there was, I think Chavez was the smaller guy that got all his ribs broken by the tree trunk at the end. And,
right.
And Mac was Jesse's buddy, and like the whole cast was great. And they tried to recreate it later on. They had in the Predators movie. But there was some sort of magic in that first one.
Exactly. The first one's a classic. I enjoy it thoroughly. It hits the right points. And bringing in a director like John McTiernan to helm it all, he really kind of held it all together. And because, again, you don't see the Predator until well into the movie.
Yeah.
The first half of the movie is a standard action movie where you got, Arnold, being Americans, killing brown people that are doing something wrong. And then it switches into, wait a sec, we're getting hunted.
Yeah. I mean, look, we also have practical effects again.
Yes.
Predator, I mean, when you look at when that took place, you could almost say that was probably the golden age of squeezing the most juice out of that piece of fruit that was practical effects. I mean,
well, there's still some CGI, but yeah, you're
right.
That
thing holds up still today, the man in the suit as Predator, that you don't look like, oh, wow, that's just a guy walking around in a big clunky suit.
And I'm gonna take your golden age analogy here and kind of throw something out there. Back in the 40s, 50s, there was that golden age of the Universal monsters. I'm talking like Dracula,
the Mummy.
Frankenstein, Mummy, exactly. Yeah. All those monsters in the Universal stable. I'm not the first to make this argument, but I'm going to repeat it. The 80s was another golden age, but our monsters changed. Our golden age monsters were the Alien, the Predator, the Terminator.
Critters. The Blob. But yes, I mean, they spawned off lots of other ones that weren't as good, but there were some great ones.
Right. I mean, we're still talking about them 20, 30 years later.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. So yeah, Predator, I enjoy Predator 2 for what it was.
Again, also not really kid-friendly. I remember getting yelled at by my mom for watching it when I shouldn't have been watching it, but also being completely enthralled by it.
Yes. And again, I also enjoyed Predators. Again, it didn't make probably the money that 20th Century Fox wanted it to make.
Yeah, no, it was enjoyable.
But I didn't feel it was necessarily a step in the wrong direction. It was interesting, but I'm curious as to what Shane Black is going to do next year with what he claims is not a reboot. It's supposed to be a sequel, and it's just called The Predator.
Well, yeah, and I also want to point out, too, something very interesting that I think Predator 2... The number one thing I want to give credit to the movie Predator 2 was there's that scene where Danny Glover goes into the spaceship and he finds the Predator's trophy case.
Yes.
And there's an alien skull in there.
That was smart in thinking ahead. Now, in subsequent interviews, we've seen that maybe 20th Century Fox wasn't necessarily planning a crossover sometime later. It was more like, let's just throw this in there as fun.
No, exactly. That's what I say. Somebody along the way thought that was a smart thing to do to get people thinking and make connections in their head, right? And then that's kind of what a lot of people are doing now is like, well, let's take that connection and actually, plant that seed and come back and harvest it 2 years later.
Which is what Marvel did in their cinematic universe. So these franchises aren't dead, but, when it comes to the Alien universe, just to touch back on that, Covenant's going to have to be amazing to really bring me back in, which is sad because it was one of my favorite franchises. Predator, I'm interested. It's not as dead for me as Alien has become, only because there's been less of the films and they haven't been as awful.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest. The Marvel movies were meant to be long, drawn-out sagas. They're based on comic books that played out over years and years and years. Predator and Alien probably never were meant to be. Right? I mean, Star Wars also kind of was. It was meant to be a saga that played out. But so, I mean, we can't fault them for trying, but that's why I think some of these don't work because they were never imagined to be more than what they were.
Exactly.
Okay, next one. Another one that's on the horizon still, even though it's almost a decade old now, Avatar. So I had just put in here that unprecedented earnings from one standalone movie that had no sort of history. I put in here that there is some investment from Disney. They've redone a big segment of their Animal Kingdom park down in Orlando to be Avatar World. We've been hearing about Cameron's investment to Avatar 2. So it's going to be some sort of a franchise, but it's like, man, it sort of came out of nowhere and has all this cred when all it really was one movie.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. It's just one movie, but I'm going to say here's what I'm going to say about Avatar. I saw the movie in the theater on IMAX in 3D, and when I got done with that movie, I felt like what I think people would have felt when they left Star Wars in 1977.
Yeah.
I thought the game had changed.
No, and I think it was a powerful combination of storytelling, visual effects, fantasy, score, all that kind of stuff sort of came together and made it special. And, a lot of people came out and, kind of funny and said, well, it's the same thing as Dances with Wolves. It's Dances with Wolves in space, which is true, but again, that sort of says like, well, yeah, you've never heard of the hero's journey, and that's been played out 1,000 times.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, how can you tell that story in a different way? So, yeah, I agree. It was special when you saw it. You're like, wow, this is something that's not like everything else. There's something more special about this, is what I felt.
And now Cameron's saying there's going to be 4 more films. He's got plans for 5 Avatar films.
Well, that's one way to get your franchise to last 50 years, is just do one every decade.
Well, that's the thing, He's claiming he's going to just keep filming them. At least, I'd have to go double check, but he's going to film at least a couple of them, or maybe all of them, at once.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I mean, he's a guy, too, that's so tied into the special effects and technology that it's one of those things, almost like Lucas when he did the prequels. It's like, look, the technology exists now for me to do something I want to do. Or if he says, well, the technology is a little bit away from me doing what I want to do, he might wait, So,
yeah. I mean, Cameron's on record as saying that, they had to create some of the technology they needed to make the first Avatar. Mm-hmm. Now it's been a few years; things have caught up, so maybe he can push that envelope a bit more. And again, I don't want to keep bringing up Marvel, but the thing that I think gives Avatar potential here is that there's a singular vision. Clearly, the Marvel Universe has a singular vision. They know where they're going. Now, it's decided by committee, but Marvel knows where they're going with their franchise.
Yeah.
Even though there's a bunch of movies coming out, they're planning out 5 years ahead of time.
Well, and it has leadership, right? And I think that's what Avatar has, too, with Cameron. Even though with Marvel it's more of sort of maybe a committee, but they have leadership. It's not just a studio sort of forcing a writer or a comic book company to say, well, you're going to have to agree to this because this is what we want.
Right, and that's where DC falters. Because now I think they're starting to get cohesive leadership, because now you have Jeff Johns, who's now the chief creative officer of DC, and he's helping to steer the movies and the franchise. Is it too little too late?
Yeah, I mean, that shit show train, I think, has left the station already.
Right, so once the train's off the rails, can you get it back on? We'll see. I have high hopes for Wonder Woman. We've mentioned that before. But going back to Avatar, you have a singular vision. Cameron knows what he wants to do, and he's going to do it. So the question now comes, is his vision worth seeing?
Yeah. And that's why we say it's sort of too early, but it could be one of these franchises that exists down into the future.
I'm interested.
No, I'm totally interested. Me too. It's like it's been so far between though that I'm like I'm not watching my calendar anymore. It's like, well, let me know when it's coming out, and then I'll be there.
Exactly. So the time has gone on is potentially dangerous.
It is dangerous. It may be dangerous. We don't know.
Right.
Okay, jumping to something else, a little bit different from other things we talked about as well. Game of Thrones. Again, first book, 1996. The books are still going, obviously, but there was sort of this not long, but there was this gestation period for basically 15 years before the HBO series began in 2011. And a note I wanted to put here is this sort of one of the great examples of proving that you don't need sort of film studios as a foundation to get a great universe going.
Well, some stories like this, I wouldn't say episodic, but they're epics. You necessarily can't tell the story in movie format. Movie, you get 2-3 hours tops.
Yeah, but I think up until this point, people would have, some things would have never started, but they've tried to do it in the past. They've tried to take things that should have been 3 movies and forced them into 1 movie, and we got one sort of mediocre movie that then never became anything else, right?
Right.
So that's what I like about this, is I think that there's people out there now that know, like, hey, the film deal isn't the big pie in the sky. If I want this thing to really be successful, I can go to HBO, I can go to Netflix, right, and let this thing play out over time.
Yeah, because unfortunately the movie industry's it's become too big. They're taking less risks. Mm-hmm. So TV is kind of where it's at right now. Because of streaming, you have people willing to invest a fair amount of money, a lot of money, in fact, to take risks, to be the place where people want to come see this show. And that's what HBO did. They took a risk. I mean, let's face it. In 2011, there was no reason for them to expect, we're going to make this sci-fi show that people are going to all love and freak out over, and we're going to make all this money from it.
Yeah. Well, fantasy.
Right.
But
sorry, you're right.
But that's one of those things too, where it's like, I guess if we did enough research, it's like, who do we really need to give the credit for doing their scouting and homework, or who made the pitch to HBO to say, like, look, this is a book saga that's playing out. It's getting really big. It's been, it's a big epic. It's really long. There's more books yet to come. Like, let's jump on this right now. Like, somebody made a smart decision there.
Because you're right. That was a huge risk, and you're right. Whoever made that decision, hopefully they're a very rich person now.
Yeah, I mean, because look, they had things, and this isn't sci-fi geek fantasy or whatever, but they had things like The Wire and Oz and The Sopranos, and so they had proven that they can do these series.
Right.
But yeah, maybe not sort of this fantasy that would get this big. I mean,
well, but again, so The Wire, also very critically acclaimed,
mm-hmm.
but it's a current. It happens now. It's police drama, procedural, whatever. Great characters, great writing, but you're not having to pay for the special effects that you're going to need for a show like Game of Thrones. So, The Wire is, a fantastic show as much as it is. It's a much bigger risk when you want to take that kind of hardcore writing and excellent characters, but then let's add dragons and make them real.
Yeah, I mean the Wire, the budget, the special effects budget for the whole entirety of that show is probably not even 1 season of Game of Thrones, right?
Exactly.
So you're right, there is a much bigger risk, but they've done well, and I think they're already talking about doing, because they know the books are going to run out, so they're already talking about, well, let's do some prequel stuff, let's do some spin-off shows, but again, have all that equity going into one place. So I'm excited for that, because I'm very much into Game of Thrones. I've read all the books, I've seen all the shows, very much into it, so I'm hoping that one plays out like Star Wars does for my own well-being.
And it has a potential to.
Okay, going on, back to Cameron, we have Terminator. So again, the note I had here for the Terminator franchise is Arnold, right? Like, that's some of the baggage there to me, is that got launched with the superhero that was Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 80s. I'm not I love the story. I think it was great, T1, T2, but as Arnold goes away, it's sort of interesting that the success of the franchise also goes away. I think there's a lot of credit that has to be given to Arnold and how successful that was initially.
But you say that Terminator 3 had Arnold, and it was not good.
Yeah, but that's what I would say. I wrote the note here that the series faded as Arnold faded. So when Arnold was sort of kind of getting to be an old man, like it didn't work anymore, right? And then so when they brought in Christian Bale, which that movie was entertaining, but it didn't get back to the promised land of T1 and T2.
No. In fact, yeah. I mean, obviously T1 and T2 are fantastic. T1 is very low budget. I mean, It's funny, you go back and watch it now, and like with a scene where Arnold is removing his eye, and it's very fake looking.
Yeah.
Or even what else?
But Terminator 1 is, like I said, going back, it was very
It's low budget.
It's low budget, but it's very high concept.
Yes,
That's what was great about Terminator
right.
1.
So it was so good that like, it made so much money that he got so much money to make Terminator 2, which is still high concept, but now here's the money to do this.
Right. And the technology sort of caught up, but then it was, Cameron or whatever pushed it.
Yes.
The Liquid Man and all that kind of stuff.
And I would say so. Yeah, T1's fantastic. T2's fantastic. I would say even I enjoy Terminator Salvation. I really enjoy much more than Terminator 3.
Yeah, Terminator 3 was Rise of the Machines.
Yes.
And then Salvation was Christian Bale.
Yes.
And then there was Genesis.
And then Genesis, which I recently watched just last week. I finally watched it.
Well, which one? Wait, which one was the one with Christian Bale and the guy from Avatar?
That was
the fourth. That was Salvation.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay, yeah. That one I enjoyed quite a bit. I'm pretty sure I watched Genesis, but I don't remember anything about it.
I recently watched it last week because I was curious. I heard it did terrible, except for in China. Apparently, it made all the money in China.
Yeah.
And again, it went PG-13. Oh, it's hard. I understand you get more audience.
Yeah, I mean that's what I said about Terminator. It wasn't really kid friendly, so that that can either play in your favor or play against you, and it's almost like now it's almost in the middle, right? It's not knowing whether it's trying to appeal to everybody or be really.
All I'm going to say is, if you have not yet seen Terminator Genesis, don't. It's that bad. It is that bad.
Yeah, I may have not have even seen it. I just know I don't know, whatever. But
don't. Yeah. It's that bad.
But yeah, so again, that was one that I think, baggage. I think Arnold was, for better or worse. Now it's baggage. At the time, it was great, but and then it wasn't really kid friendly. So I think that's all. It was good for toys, but again, it wasn't a kid friendly movie. So,
I don't know. The last movie was so bad. I think the franchise should die.
I almost say to an extent that what they could have turned that franchise into. And I'm making sort of a vague connection here, but The Matrix came along and stole that sort of concept of the machines taking over. You know what I mean? Like
much different way, but yes.
Yes, it's like that's what it could have went into. Like that's what the big payoff could have been. But then sort of The Matrix came along, stole that thunder. Those two things in a really weird universe could have been one big thing, right?
Right. Yeah, I think it's time to let that one die.
Yeah, probably.
Which is sad because, like I said, I enjoyed Terminator Salvation. It wasn't the best movie, but I think they could have extended it from there and made something interesting.
Well, look, one of the biggest things of Salvation wasn't one of the biggest sort of Easter egg kind of reveals was the CGI Arnold at the end, right?
Yes.
So it's like even then, still they know that so much of it is Arnold. Like he carried so much of it in the first two movies.
Yeah. And Salvation ended where there was potential. I would have liked to have seen where they would have gone with it, but Genesis is just awful, awful, awful.
All right, so let's get that taste out of our mouth and go on to more robots in the Transformers. So again, to me, I put a few things here. This one's very near and dear to my heart. This was a pillar of a new age of toys in the early 80s. I mean, to me, Transformers sort of transcended what toys were. Marvel, Hasbro, Takara Tomy was the Japanese company that sort of owned the franchise. Pioneer of kids' cartoon leap into a legitimate movie as well. In the mid '80s, they had an animated movie that
loved that movie.
Right, it holds up. I mean, it's like it's a great movie, and it was based off of what was essentially a super sort of kids show. I mean, the cartoon was really for kids,
yes,
but the movie got sort of grown up in a way. The animated movie, so they did great with that.
And they swore once.
Yeah, they swore once or twice, I believe, in that one. Great soundtrack, great movie music from that age. And to me, this is one that, it was waiting for the technology to come along to make a legitimate live-action film. And when it got there, we got it.
I enjoyed
2007.
I enjoyed it. It was cool to see the robots that you saw as a kid.
To me, that was the one, that was like the ultimate anticipation for sort of 80s kids. Yes. There probably was nothing that would have more anticipation than a Transformers movie.
I really enjoyed that first movie. But After that, I thought it went off the rails.
Yeah, and also I say looking back now too, and even at the time, I was kind of upset with how, I wanted the boxy-legged robots, right? You know what I mean? That I loved,
Right.
and they turned them into, but they made it believable with all these little tiny small pieces and stuff like that. But it was cool. It was enjoyable. It was the first, to me, the first and most successful Gen X early millennia nostalgia franchise movie launching. There's a couple other ones we're going to talk about, but to me, that was one that sort of said, hey, we're going to take this stuff that old millennials and young Gen Xers were really into, and we're going to capitalize on it.
Yeah, because it did it well, and it's still doing it well. Maybe not necessarily with that particularly group, only because it's become worldwide now. And
yeah, very much global.
These movies now, we've had 4 of them, a 5th one's coming up. They are now critic-proof, because the last couple have been just absolutely lambasted. They're critical. They've been drugged through the coals critically.
Yeah.
But still making billions of dollars, so...
Yeah, I think they've done the thing that's sort of like, we don't care about critical acclaim. That's not what this is about, right? And so without them having to worry about that, it's freeing them in a sort of a way. Now, I don't like the direction the latest movies have been going. I'm not really that excited about the next one. But again, the power of their toys... I remember having Transformers bed sheets and comforter on my bed as a kid, Halloween costumes. I mean, still when I travel to Asia and go into some of the more highbrow toy shops over there, a third of what they have is Transformers stuff. You know what I mean? So those things are going to make it last for a long, long time. Video games, it wasn't really great in. I had a couple, but, it didn't really cross over as well there. But
I heard the last game was pretty good.
Well, they had the one that was based on the 80s look.
Yes.
And I have that game. Interestingly enough, I haven't even played it yet because it's like a 2-player beat-em-up game, and I haven't had somebody like here to play 2-player with it. But when I saw it, I'm like, oh my god, I need that because it's based on the 80s movies. I have a couple of the DVD box sets of the first couple seasons,
Same here.
which I think are going for like $200 now online.
Oh, really?
If you want to sell them, they're like $200.
I had no idea.
No, they are. That's why I was going to go and get the rest of them, but I can't because they're worth so much. But again, little things like that tie into the value of a franchise, right? If your DVD box set came out and nobody wants it and you can get it for $10.99, that's different than the Transformers ones that they did a limited release and now they're going for $300.
Wow. I'll give Transformers credit for this. For me, it was a gateway drug. I don't know the particular name is what it is in anime or whatnot, but for me, it was a gateway drug into giant robot anime.
Mm-hmm. Mech.
Yes, thank you. If it hadn't been for Transformers, I don't think I'd ever would have checked out Robotech, which is a bastardization of a few, Japanese properties.
Yeah,
but I definitely wouldn't have gotten into Gundam.
Yeah, no, I mean, that genre, that's the one that came over to the States and really crossed over here in America, right?
Right. I mean, even the toy, what was his name? There was the big Transformer that was the F-14 that turned into a guy that walked around.
Was it Starscream?
Not Starscream. I can't remember his name.
What color was he?
Red and white.
Yeah. No, so he was almost exactly like the Robotech jet.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which obviously was something else, but they took it and they threw an Autobot logo on it. And now he's a Transformer.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a direct connection there. But yeah, I admit that I'm not the huge Gundam fan either, but I've at least watched some of it and enjoy a lot of it. I got into it for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's more about big robots, right?
Right.
I mean, that's a whole genre of science fiction that, Transformers was a thing that crossed over here, but it's like, that's what makes people like us think that big robot things are cool.
Exactly. I mean, to this day, I still think the Transformers movies are, they're cool and they're interesting to a degree. I mean, they maybe not so critical, but I think the third one was the one that I really enjoyed where Chicago gets all messed up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I like the second one, too. I don't know. I think it was after the third one the fourth, and if there has been a fifth one, they started coming off the tracks a little bit. But
Yeah.
All right, following up with them, pretty similar in a way, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So this was another massive toy phenomenon in the late 80s. I remember getting into it and running to the store and grabbing them off the shelves. But originally, sort of comic book art. The cartoon was huge, super kid-friendly. Again, some of these other things we talked about were held back because they weren't really for kids. But when you can get equity in something as children, you can cash in on that later as adults, right? And that's what they have.
Well,
It might be caught between generations, though. I put in here that it's sort
Yes.
of it's not full blown millennial, but it's like you were too old for Ninja Turtles, really, right?
Right.
You know, so it's kind of in between generations there.
But my brother, who's 12 years younger, totally into it.
Yeah, and I think the Ninja Turtles, their sort of attitude and their feeling, I think it does cross over well to even millennials now. They're only 15 to 20 years old. I think that sort of cowabunga dude 90s feel, right? I think it crosses over well.
You know, they still have ongoing cartoons on Nickelodeon that have done well. I saw the first movie of the new franchise, and
They're fun.
it was fun.
I thought they were a lot of fun.
I heard the second one was a lot better. I hadn't actually seen
I did see the second one. I thought it was a little bit long, but it was fun because it brings in Krang and Bebop and Rocksteady and some of the other characters. So it's a ton of fun. And the Turtles themselves are fun, right? It's almost kind of like what's the droid from from Rogue One? What's his name?
Oh my god, I just brain farted.
KSO,
Thank you.
K2SO.
Yes, thank
it's almost to me the Ninja Turtles are almost like that. That just when you see them, they're such arresting sort of characters.
Yes. And you know what? Like I said, it wasn't necessarily my generation, but I do find it funny that the original reason for the Turtles coming from Eastman and Laird was because they were kind of mocking, the comic books of the time.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a whole franchise of itself.
No, it is sort of this crazy idea. I remember first hearing about it, like, what? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Well, you got to remember, too, the origin story is tied to Daredevil, too.
Yeah, and they had the original movies were 1990 to 1993. The Turtles 2 was the big one for me that I loved the most. Vanilla Ice was in it.
Go Ninja, go.
The Secret of the Ooze. But yeah, and then the cartoon was great. So again, I don't know how much staying power that's going to have, but again, the Turtles have stuck around for a good 20 years now, and they're great toys, and they make for great cartoons. And
if you had asked me a couple 3 years ago, when that first movie came out, live action, I would have said, you know what, I think they're going to be around again for a while. But the next movie came out, and it didn't make...
No, the first one, it could have been much better. Like, it was a lot of fun, but I don't want to take the heat off of them. It could have been much better than it was. They could have done it a little bit more serious and long-term, but, how serious can you make something like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Right. Exactly. So, is it going to be around? It'll be around in some shape, I think, for a while, but I don't know if they're going to continue with this current movie franchise.
Well, I think they were strong as a franchise because they are so much more than just movies, right? So if the movies don't do well, they still have life.
Exactly.
Next one, similar from that same time stage, G.I. Joe. Well, not even really from that same time stage because G.I. Joe is quite old, actually.
Well, he's the male Barbie, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I say there's big baggage here because you have this sort of war and military timeline genre that I think it's hard to make something like that so serious, kid-friendly anymore in our modern world where we're obviously we're getting much more politically correct. We're not trying to be, world police anymore, and I just don't know how well something like that exists anymore as it would have in the 60s through the 80s, right?
Well, and really its heyday was the 80s. Let's be honest. I mean, when they shrank them down from Barbie size into what became known, so instead of being dolls for boys, they became action figures.
And they were amazing toys. They were one of the best toys where you had guys that were small enough that you could have the vehicles and the guys could fit inside the vehicles, right?
And they tried to differentiate themselves from the Star Wars because the Star Wars basically had just 4 points of articulation, maybe 5.
Oh yeah, they had knees and elbows.
Stiff. Yes.
Yeah, just had knees and elbows and
the kung fu grip. That was what they got, the kung fu grip.
And they had all the little weapons, so they were great toys. They were. And I just think that's one of the ones that it kind of has ran its course. I don't think the world as it exists now has a place for.
But it was very much a product of its time because the cartoon was, the cartoon and the toys were pinnacle in the 80s.
Yeah, the cartoon toys were great. Same thing. They had another same thing. I don't know if it was the same sort of deal that the Transformers one had, but they had an animated movie that was the same thing in the 80s. It had swearing. It had people that actually died in the movie.
Yep.
It was great. It came out about the same time. But as far as after that, keeping going in the future, I'm not sure. And the new movies are kind of, I don't even put them on the same bar as, well, I put the new Ninja Turtles movies higher than the G.I. Joe ones. And, as much as I love The Rock as a WWE character, I can't stand him as an actor.
Really?
No.
Oh, see, I thought he was fantastic as Roadblock. I really like the second movie much more than the first movie, but apparently, it's been years, and I don't think they're coming back again.
Yeah, I don't think so either. They kind of flubbed it up. They could have made it a big long thing that played out, and they kind of rushed everything in, and whatever. But
I don't know where this franchise is going. I think there were some missteps definitely. Starting in the 80s, I mean, they started out as basically World War II era action figures, moving into more modern, and then when they started going day glow colors and whatnot, and getting really fantastical.
But that was the 80s, you know what I mean? Like, you had to go there.
Yeah, but when it started out, I mean, it was basically, Cobra was basically an analog for the Soviet Union. Yeah. And
I mean, I love Cobra Commander as a villain, though. He's one of my favorite villains.
So
and was it Frank Welker that voiced him and Starscream?
Yes.
I mean, just that's something right there to give credit to.
But with the constant paranoia of nuclear death because of Russia in the 80s, it was fun to have a cartoon as a kid that kind of played lip service to that, but still, no one actually ever died.
Well, it was it was also military propaganda in a sense that I mean, it made you really not even in a bad way. It made you feel like the military were heroes, right? A real American hero,
right? Exactly. And though the Cold War may be over, and now we're moving on to another one, maybe not, but that's not our question. Whole other topic, but also things have changed greatly since then. The cartoon was basically extended commercials for the toys. You can't do that so much anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
So, it was fun for what it was. The movies, whatever.
Yeah, whatever, yeah. Could have been better. Two here to finish up. Dune. 1965 book release. Again, the book had a lot of time to gestate in modern culture. Has a cult following. To me, when I saw Jodorowsky's Dune, the documentary, that really opened my eyes that if he would have done the movie, it could have changed history. Because, again, anybody who hasn't seen that documentary, it's a must watch.
I need to see that
because
I'm a big fan of him.
He had H.R. Geiger on his staff doing art direction for Dune before he went on and did Alien. Right. Some of the artwork that was in Alien was in storyboards for Dune. Same thing with a lot of the people that went on to create ILM and LucasArts. They were on this project before they went on to do Star Wars and Alien.
I don't think... Here's the thing. I think... He had the imagination for it, there's no question. I don't know that technology could have helped him back then when he wanted to make it in the late 70s, early 80s.
In a sense, it's probably a blessing because we probably wouldn't have had the things we had later on had that movie actually came out. But it's interesting to look back and see it. In Dune, as I haven't read the book, but I've saw the movie and read enough things about the book that I'm ready for it to be done in a great way in modern technology, and I think it could be a really great story.
There's potential there, and now that they're talking that I'm going to screw his name up, Dennis
Villeneuve or something. I don't know.
I always butcher his name, so I apologize. Coming in with guns blazing, I'll see how he does with his version of Blade Runner, but I have high hopes for that, and if he hits the ground running on that, I really hope he runs with Dune.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a diamond in the rough in the sense that, like, hey, it was this great story that's been out there. It's been in people's mind for the past 30 years, but nobody's really capitalized on it. And I think
if done right, and that's the key thing here, and you can say that about any property, but I think if you get the right people involved, Dune could be the sci-fi Game of Thrones.
Yeah, the look's got to be right? Sort of like kind of like the Nolan Batman thing. Like the look and feel has to be right. It can't look and feel like Star Wars. It can't look and feel like Guardians of the Galaxy. It needs to kind of create its own look and feel to work.
Yes.
Last one here we're going to get into, Indiana Jones. So to me, this one, I maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but to me, this one has already came and went. To me, it was a lot about Harrison Ford really carried this, his star power. But I do like this was true adventure, which I don't think exists all that much anymore. I mean, what happened? What happened to these true adventure movies? I mean, we had things like the National Treasure, Nicolas Cage movies. I thought they touched on that a little bit. You had things like Tomb Raider that came out, and but did video games and fantasy just replace this for young people? What happened?
I think so, because what series of video games that's really popular now? It's not Just Cause.
Assassin's Creed or
not Assassin's Creed. It's terrible. I can't remember the top of my head, but there's a current game series that's very Indiana Jones-esque. Shoot, let me look at that.
But so you're making the point that yes, you do think that sort of living out these things through video games may be taking over than watching them in a movie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, no one's done anything like that yet. They've tried, like you said, but no one else has really kind of come through.
And they did the remake Indiana Jones, or not the remake, but the reboot of it, the Crystal Skull or whatever, that had Harrison Ford and it had Shia LaBeouf, he gets a lot of hate. I don't mind Shia LaBeouf, actually. I just want to put that out there. And they had Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. But again, to me, it came, it did its thing, and now it's going to be gone. I don't really see it coming back. Unless it has time to just go away dormant for 20 years and then something else like it comes back,
Right. Crystal Skull, that was a misstep. I mean, I like that they tied into the Red Scare of the Red Scare feeling of the era.
No, again, there were some elements of the story that could have been great, but I think it kind of was one of those cash grab, what's old is new again, let's bring Indy back,
I don't know. Like I said, I want to say, was it Just Cause? Was that the game? I don't remember now. I'm sorry. Or was it Far Cry? Maybe that's it.
Yeah, I mean, there's like Far Cry and Badlands and Red Dead Redemption, and there's a lot of games around that sort of idea and feeling, I think. But
right. So basically, that speaks to your point. Yes, other things have kind of taken that. It's Is there still room for Indiana Jones in our life? I'd like to think so, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one to have a franchise in that sort of true adventure sort of feeling. But all right, so I mean that's it. You guys can let us know. We talked about some that we think are on the horizon. There's some shows out right now that could it expand out into more than just a TV show, more than just a Netflix series?
Well, I'll throw out there. We won't go into it deep, but The Expanse. It's a series of novels. They've got several novels out. They've got spin-off novellas coming off, and now you've got the sci-fi series. They seem to be building a little empire right now, and it's early yet, but I think they're on the right path. So that could be a next big franchise coming.
Yeah, so let us know, and now that we've gotten this topic out there, as things come out and we hear about more stuff, we'll start to touch on that. Like, hey, maybe this could be a franchise, or maybe it could follow in the footsteps of something else. But let us know in some comments. Maybe we're way off based on some. Maybe there's one or two that we probably just completely even forgot to talk about, or maybe because this is things that Michael and I are not into. So we want to cover that stuff off. A long show, but we thought this was going to be a lot of good nuts and bolts topic for our audience to get into and interact with us on as well.
That's our episode again.
Episode 10 in the books.
That's right, 10 episodes in. 10 episodes of geek awesomeness. At least I think so.
Yeah, of course.
So coming up next episode 11. We're well into double digits now. We're going to be talking about some of the revelations from Star Wars Celebration. Of course, we're going to hit on the new Star Wars trailer. Alan, I think you're going to talk about some Netflix shows.
Yeah. So I had put off getting Netflix until the Marvel shows have sort of banked up more. And I finally got it. I caught up on most of the seasons. I watched Daredevil 1 and 2, Jessica Jones, just starting Luke Cage now. So I know you're a little bit ahead of me. Iron Fist, there was a lot of discussion about that. I haven't gotten to it yet. So we'll dig into that in more in depth next episode. And then also a big movie that was much to talk about, Ghost in the Shell.
Which I think we're going to have some divisive opinions on that.
Yeah, we specifically didn't talk about it very much because we wanted to save it for the next episode, so that'll be fun.
And I think we're going to be hitting up another one of our rankings lists.
Yeah, we have a couple good ones really in the works. Do you want to tease them right now?
No, I think we'll let them see what they are. They're going to have to come back and listen.
Okay, yeah, they're going to have to come back and listen. We have two really good of our definitive 1 to 10 lists that we're really excited to share on the episode. So,
well, I will. I'll talk about the one.
Okay, talk about the one.
We're going to give the definitive ranking of the Alien and Predator movies.
Right, which is a good one that sort of came up during our franchise discussions. We realized that there was maybe more to delve into there. So.
And then another reason, too, is we have another Alien movie coming out.
Yep.
So this will be at least the 11th movie in the franchise. So it makes it perfect. There are currently 10 movies out, so we're going to rank them from worst to first. Just a reminder one more time, if you need to find us, we are on the internet. On Twitter at WNRD Podcast. You can also find recent episodes at soundcloud.com/WNRD. Our email address, if you'd like to go that route, is WNRDpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, all of our episodes will forever, as far as I know.
In perpetuity.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I want. In perpetuity, they're going to be on YouTube. Just do a search for WNRD Podcast. Until then, I'll be seeing you.
Take care.